When I am outside taking my little dog Frederick on a walk, I often notice all of the pretty rocks in my neighbors' yards or ones that are lying around in nature. They're all different sizes, shapes, and colors. Sometimes I've noticed there are rocks that are smooth and some that are bumpy. And even some of those rocks are really pretty and sparkly. There are so many different kinds of rocks out there, but they can actually tell us a lot about the history of our Earth and other helpful information about the land. In fact, there are people out there who study rocks for their jobs. Who would do this kind of job? Find out what STEM career I'm describing in this episode of the STEM Career Quest. Have you ever found yourself asking this question, what do I want to be when I grow up? Maybe you already have an answer to that. Maybe you don't. Both are okay. Welcome to the STEM Career Quest podcast, a show made for kids like you to help you build your dreams or even find new ones in science, technology, engineering, and math. Each week, hear captivating stories and interviews to explore the exciting world of STEM. Oh, and grown-ups and teachers, you can listen too. We'll talk to experts in STEM who are passionate about what they do in the real world and how they make a positive impact in their careers. Created and hosted by K-5 STEM coach Naomi Meredith, this show will spark your imagination and passions. Join us each week on our quest to explore the possibilities of careers in STEM, one episode at a time. The STEM career we're going to be hearing about today is what it is like being a geologist. In this career, they study what the Earth is made of and how it is formed. To tell us all about it, we will be meeting our special guest, Vanessa Lintz. Vanessa was always fascinated about rocks ever since she was a kid. She grew up in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, so there were plenty of rocks to explore. As she grew up, she had exciting high school classes about Earth's features and geology, which helped spark her journey in becoming a geologist. In her role as a geologist, she has spent most of her time exploring for oil and gas and drilling wells in Colorado. Also, she has participated in fossil digs with paleontologists, which is another field in STEM. So excited for you to get to know Vanessa and her STEM career. Now, get ready for today's episode quest, my lovely Questees. As you listen, find out the answers to these 3 questions. At the end of the episode, I will be revealing the answers. Question number 1 is, what does Vanessa and her team use a lot of when they are out in the field drilling for oil? Question number 2, true or false? Sometimes Vanessa sees fossils while being a geologist. And question number 3, who loved rocks in Vanessa's family? Be a careful listener. Now let's jump into the interview. Well, thank you, Vanessa, so much for joining us today. If you wouldn't mind telling us, what is your STEM career and how would you describe what you do?
Thank you, Naomi. It's really great to join you today, and I'm really excited to talk with you about the field of geology and some of the things that I've been able to do throughout my career. So I am a geologist. What geologists do in general is to learn about the Earth, and we study it from the big processes that move and shake and grow and change our Earth down to the little microscopic minerals that make up everything that make up our Earth. We look at it at a grand scale from the shape of the entire planet and what it's made of down to its core and all the way out to the tops of the mountains and processes like earthquakes and volcanoes and water resources and energy. My career in particular has mostly been in energy and oil and gas. I worked in oil and gas exploration and also the drilling side of things, getting the wells drilled and able to produce the oil and gas out of the ground. And it's been a really fun career. It's something that I am really passionate about and I enjoy a lot. And I'm glad to share it with all of you today.
Well, I'm sure it's hard to pick because I know there's a lot of cool parts about it. And I know there's a lot of kids out there who love studying the earth and rocks and minerals and learning more about oil. But what would you say if you had to pick, what is the coolest part about your job?
Well, I like you said, it's hard for me to pick because there are really just a lot of things that I absolutely love about it. But one of my favorite things really is the number of different technologies that I've been able to use. And I've been fortunate to work for some companies that really are just science forward and wanting to do research and study the rocks that we're drilling and learn more about them so that we can take that technology to other places, but also to help us produce our wells in the best way possible and to be efficient with our money when we drill. And so I've been able to wear a lot of different hats and be involved in a lot of different parts of the study, from helping the geophysicists on getting seismic data and also using that seismic data, and then being at the well when we run wireline logs, which we take. There are companies that have electric tool sets that they run down into the hole after you're done drilling, and they're attached to a cable that transfers the information from that tool up to the wellhead where you can usually see it. There are some that record it and then bring the data up and you look at it later. But the ones that I've been on have primarily you get to sit in a truck on the location and actually watch the data being recorded live and see changes in your rock as the tool, they start at the bottom and they bring the tool up and you get to see those changes happening live from a truck on the site. So to me, that's just been really awesome. I've been able to work with cores, which we take a tool that's kind of like a giant straw and connect it to the drill string and we send it down and we use that it spins around and cuts a shaft of rock out of the ground in your target section, and then it brings it back up and you're able to then look at the rock underground the way it is when you're drilling through it, which normally when we get to see rocks, they've been at the surface getting weathered. They're subject to all of the wind and the rain and the sunlight. So you see them and they're not the same as they are underground. And so that's been really awesome to be able to work with all of those things. Also, I've been able to do some fossil studies, which, for me, geology has not just been my career, but it is also a hobby of mine. I enjoy dinosaurs and fossils. And so being able to do a little bit of fossil study in with my job has been really cool.
Is it accidental when you see a fossil, or do you guys kind of know they're in the area? And also with that, do you work with paleontologists at all?
Well, for the work that we were doing, we were going to specific areas looking for a specific type of fossil.
Mm.
And so we did a lot of pre-work where we used geologic maps and looked for the specific rock type that we knew we would find these fossils in, and then went to those locations to try and find our fossils. So we were very intentional about it. But I will tell you, I hear these stories about people that have gone walking their dogs, especially in England. You hear about it every once in a while where somebody's walking their dog on the beach and they stumble across some really awesome fossil. And to be honest, it's happened in our own area. I live in the Denver area in Colorado, and Coors Field is our baseball stadium here. And while they were building the stadium, they found part of a triceratops right at home field or home plate. And that is why we now have Dinger, the purple dinosaur, as our mascot, is because of that find. And there was another construction project recently that found a torosaur, which is another type of triceratops. As they were building, somebody that was running some of their heavy equipment noticed something different and went and got one of the engineers, who we actually know, and his father's a geologist. So he knew it was something special, and they stopped and called the museum and were able to do a whole paleontological dig based on that. So it sometimes it's entirely by chance. I've not had that luck yet. Mine has been pretty intentional, but I always hold out hope that one of these days I'm going to stumble across some really amazing specimen as I'm out hiking or doing something fun.
That's so cool. And it sounds like your job is really active and there's a lot of cool things to look at and learn and combining what you're seeing in nature with the technology. And you already told us some cool things.
Yeah.
So many cool things and cool stories. But is there anything in particular building off of that? A neat project you worked on? You've already told us some cool things or a cool story.
Mhm.
Something else you want to share with us?
Well, I think one of my top cool stories is that we took a technology that wasn't being used in this way at the time, but we were typically when you drill a well, you use what's called a drilling fluid in the well, and it's got some chemicals, very safe chemicals, that help the rock not react to the water because a lot of rocks, especially if they have clay in them, want to swell or slough as you're drilling, and that can be difficult to drill and you can get tools stuck in things. So typically you have mud. Well, the area that we were drilling in, the rocks were so sensitive that even the mud was too much. And so we used a foam instead. And then once we were done drilling, that foam would break down to the bottom of the hole and we wouldn't have any fluid in it. Well, that became tricky for logging tools because most of the logging tools depend on having fluid in the hole for conductivity of the electrical activity and things and what they're measuring. And so we needed to get a little creative with some of the things we were doing. And one thing we did was we used what's called a downhole camera. Now, typically, they had been using these to go in if you had casing in your hole that you wanted to inspect and make sure it was all as it should be, or if you had a problem in your well you wanted to go look at. And they'd put a little camera down in the hole along one of these wire lines. It's a big cable that goes all the way up to the top, and they wind it down as the tool goes farther and farther in the hole. Well, what we did then was we took this and ran it in our dry hole to look at the rock. And we had a fracture set where we were expecting the oil to be, and we went through and we were able to see all of the fractures. Well, the really cool part was we could actually see the oil flowing into the hole out of these fractures, which was just a phenomenal thing to be able to see. The people that I worked with, some of them had quite a bit more career experience than I did, and it was a favorite thing. I think most of them would say that was one of their favorite things out of their career was just getting to see that. And we left the camera down for a little bit and we were seeing this live in real time up on the well pad. And we were able to measure it as we watched it fill up into the bottom of the hole. And so that was a really cool experience.
3 ways to identify rocks and minerals. Out in nature, there are 3 main types of rocks: igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic. But how do we know which one is which? Scientists use different methods and try different tests to identify rocks and minerals. Sometimes you can tell what a rock might be just by looking at it. But there are so many rocks and minerals that look the same. There are some other ways too. First, you can see what the streak or color the rock makes when you rub it on a special tile called a streak plate. Sometimes the streak is the same color as the rock, but sometimes it can make a different color. For example, pyrite is shiny and it looks like a piece of gold. But when it is streaked, it leaves black powdery marks. Next is looking at the rock or mineral's luster, or how shiny it is. Does it shine like metal? Is it dull and not shiny? Or is it kind of see-through or maybe cloudy? Or does it have a pearly color? Quartz is very common and can sometimes look cloudy or even more clear like broken glass. Third, scientists check for how a rock or mineral breaks. Cleavage is when a rock breaks into flat surfaces, and fracture is when they break into bumpy, jagged pieces or certain shapes. Mica is very thin and breaks off into flat, thin sheets. But obsidian breaks in smooth, curved surfaces. Some other tests that scientists use are finding the hardness, if it's fluorescent or glows in the dark, and even what its crystal structure looks like under a microscope. Did you know these ways that scientists use to identify rocks and minerals? Pretty cool, right? Loving the STEM Career Quest podcast and want more? Join the STEM Career Quest Club. Perfect for teachers, homeschool parents, or families looking to add more educational opportunities during school breaks. Inside, you get access to a private community of other STEM Career Quest listeners, comprehension guides for each episode, teaching slides for each episode where it is broken up into chunks so you can listen in smaller segments, related STEM activities you can complete with simple materials, one monthly virtual STEM field trip, and more. Join the club at stemcareerquestpodcast.com/club. What color is oil when it comes out of the earth? I don't know if a lot of kids knew oil actually can be natural, like it's in
It
nature.
is. Well, really, it depends on the oil. There are different types of oil and different thicknesses of oil. Some of them can be almost black and very, let's see, almost like slime in texture. They're very thick in texture. Some of them are very light and very much lighter in color. The oil that we were producing is more of kind of a golden brown, and it's a lighter oil.
That's cool. It's good to know. So if you guys didn't know that, that's one of a natural resource that we have. It comes from nature and we use it for different things. Okay, so your job is so cool. I'm all about science. I love hearing about all these cool things you get to do. And I know that there are kids out there who are wondering, how did you become a geologist? What experiences in your life led you to this career? Because I bet there are some kids out there who are wondering and they want to do what you're doing.
Well, for me, I was very fortunate. I had a family that was very into rocks. My grandmother loved rocks, and when we would go out and go walking around, she was always looking for rocks for her. She had a rock garden that she would put her special rocks in with her flowers, and so we would go looking for those. I lived in a wooded area, actually up in the Rocky Mountains. We were at 10,000 feet, and so my entire area is there because of the power of geology and the activity that happened in geology to push those rocks all the way up to 10,000 and the mountains around us 14,000 feet. The town that I lived in was started because of gold mining, initially with gold mining, which gold wasn't as big in our area. So it turned over to silver mining pretty fast. But, prospectors, that's why they came in. And my dad worked at Climax Mine, the molybdenum mine up in Leadville. And so, I was surrounded by rocks and by mining and knowing that people are able to get useful things out of rocks. And so that was a big influence on me. When I got to high school, I took an earth sciences class, and it just really opened my eyes to what geology is. And learning about natural processes, not just the mining and the the useful minerals, but also just how rivers shape the earth and how the oceans shape the earth and how earthquakes shape the earth. And that just to me was so intriguing. But I actually didn't go to college to get my geology degree. I got talked into going in for a journalism degree because I also love to write. And I got to college and I took my first pre-journalism class. And at the same time, I needed another science class. So I took a geology class, and I called my parents and I said, I have to change my major because this is what I need to do. And that's what I did. And I never looked back. And it's been so much fun and so interesting. And I am thankful for the career I've been able to have.
So when you guys are out there thinking about what you like to do now and what you might want to do when you grow up, honoring your past self, just like Vanessa did, she's doing something that she loved as a kid. And so if you love doing it, there's probably a career out there for you. And if there's not, you can make it up yourself.
Absolutely.
So, along with that, what advice do you have for kids who might want to do something similar to your career?
Well, I've talked so much about all of the technology that we used and all of the kind of the data that we're able to use that it might actually surprise you. My biggest piece of advice is to put down all of the data, put down all of the devices, and get outside and just observe. Use your powers of observation. Look at the different rocks. Look at the grain sizes. Is it made up of big grain sizes or tiny grain sizes? Can you even see the grain sizes with your eyes, or do you need a magnifying glass? After it's rained and you see water flowing through the dirt, watch how it channels through the dirt. Watch how it moves the earth. I'd recommend having a notebook that you just start taking notes in things that you observe, because one of the things we do as geologists is go back and look at our notes quite a bit and go, I've seen this somewhere else. We use analogs a lot. So examples that are similar, we use those a lot to compare and contrast areas that we're working, especially if it's in a new project area. And so learning how to take those notes and just really be thorough about what it looks like and what it feels like. And do you smell any odors coming from it? Can you observe does it feel rough? Does it feel smooth? When you go to the beach this summer, watch how the waves move the sand and just keeping your eye out. If you have an interest in paleontology, watch animals and how they move. And if you happen while you're out hiking on, say, a deer skeleton, take a look at how those pieces put together. Don't necessarily touch them, especially if there's still any meat or skin on them. But, take a look at how those pieces fit together. That's what paleontologists do. They look at animals that we have today, lizards and chickens and those sorts of things, and use them to help understand how to put the fossils that they find in sea creatures and use them to help figure out how to put those fossils they find together so that we can understand them. So to be anything in geology, whether you want to be a geologist, a hydrogeologist, a volcanologist, so much of what we do is based on what we can observe. And so just really working on those powers. We have so much at our fingertips and our phones, we kind of forget how to use our eyes and our senses when we're out in nature to understand these things. And it'll just give the kids a leg up if they can start to develop those things and really, learn how to take notes about them so they can remember it later. I always suggest too, take a note about something that's not necessarily having to do with geology when you're out, notice something, but maybe, you noticed there was an extra number of ladybugs that day on the flowers. And then later when you're looking through your notebook and there was something that you were trying to remember about a certain site, but you remember it was the ladybug day, then that's in your notes and you can go back and find the rock notes that you needed. Because sometimes if you're looking at a lot of rock notes, sometimes they can all run together, but sometimes the little unusual thing that may not have anything to do with rocks might help you remember something about that day and help you find your notes.
I love that. And I bet you guys can scrounge together a notebook or two. You might even have something extra you took home from school. But that's a great way to help you remember. And if you think I can't draw, it was a great time to practice your drawing skills at the same time. So
exactly. Yeah. Drawing things that you observe in rocks is a great way to remember and help you to see, some of the great illustrators back when people were doing a lot more exploring. We still use their work today.
I love that. And if you guys remember too, we had an author and illustrator who actually illustrates nonfiction books for kids. And
wow.
Yeah, so you guys can connect those skills together too. So they all go together. I love that. Well, thank you so much, Vanessa, for your insight about being a geologist. I know there's a lot of kids out there who got really excited when they saw this episode and the ways that they can do what you're doing even as a kid. But we appreciate you being here on this show.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Hope you've been listening carefully to today's episode. We are now going to reveal the answers to today's episode quest. Question number 1 was, what does Vanessa and her team use a lot of when they're out in the field drilling for oil? Technology. There is a lot of technology used to help gather information when they are working out in the field. Question number 2 was, true or false? Sometimes Vanessa sees fossils while being a geologist. True. In fact, geology and studying fossils is one of Vanessa's hobbies. And question number 3 was, who in Vanessa's family loves rocks? Vanessa's grandmother. When Vanessa was younger, her and her grandmother would go out on walks, and her grandmother was always looking out for those cool rocks. She even had a rock garden that she would put her special finds in, along with her flowers. Make sure to check out the STEM Career Quest Club. Inside, we have an upcoming on-demand virtual field trip where Vanessa makes a guest appearance and teaches some really cool behind-the-scenes things about being a geologist. With these on-demand virtual field trips, you can watch them in your own time and interact with me and the different activities I create for you to go along with the experience. It's not a sit and get kind of thing. It's like having me with you, guiding you through a related topic to one of the episodes that we listen here on the STEM Career Quest. Perfect for rainy days, sub-plans, or even to connect with what you're already learning about in school. Make sure to check out the link to the club in the show notes. Loving the STEM Career Quest podcast? Want to be featured on the show? Leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and tell us what you love about it. Maybe you'll be featured on our next episode. What is something new that you learned today about being a geologist? Is this a type of STEM career you might want to explore more? Even if it isn't, it's always great to learn new things from new people and discover more about the world. Excited for you to continue your journey on the next episode of the STEM Career Quest. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the STEM Career Quest podcast. Grab your free episode badge, connect with today's guest, follow us on social media, join the club, and more. Find it all on our website at stemcareerquestpodcast.com.